Hey guys, this is Jack with Team Empire, and today I'm going over my Luard deck list that I actually used in Springfest for both days, both for Standard Day 1 and Tri-Regulation Day 2. Luard is a very strong deck. It's probably the second best deck in the format, besides obviously Shiranui, which it is better, especially in its stride department. But I play Luard because I like Luard more aesthetically, and I also really think that Luard's more fun than Shiranui. People can fight me on that if they want, but that's just how I think. I'm going to be going over my ride deck first, then my G zone, just because, you know, it's the G zone, it's just there. And then I'll be going over the main deck and some of my rounds in between. So moving on to the ride deck first, play the Root because you have to play the Root because of knees. Knees, when he's placed by riding over Root, like all stride deck sets, you get yourself a Luard Crest and you can draw a card. If you're going second, you can draw 2 cards. The Luard Crest, besides doing all the stuff that every other crest does, where it gives 5k power to your front row for each card in your G zone, it also has its unique effect, which is not that great. It's okay. I don't know, like, statistically how much it helped me, since I only ever used the skill probably once or twice. There was a game where I used it 4 times or 3 times, but we'll get to that round later. But yeah, obviously you need the crest. Leofall's great because Leofall, when he's rode over by Luard, you can Soul Blast 1 to draw a card, which did actually help me and come in clutch when drawing into certain combo pieces or drawing into PGs. And then finally, we have the main man himself, Luard, who people know what he does if you play it in G or play Premium, because his Ritual 3 allows you to put 2 normal units from your drop zone onto the bottom of the deck in order to stride, but it has to be at the beginning of your ride phase. So if you're going second or you're riding up and your opponent's Vanguard is already grade 3, you still have to discard cards from your hand whose grades total 3 in order to stride. His stride skill is very good. It helped me a lot when it comes to thinning the deck going second, and also finding cards like Painkiller Angel in order to draw cards if I was up on the defensive during some games. Or also helps me find stuff like Luminosity Wizard or Semius to fill up my board or get more power. So yeah, he's great. You obviously need to play him. That's it for the ride deck. For the G zone, of course, we played 8 G units because we have to. It's just standard 4 drag driver and then finally 4 drag strider. I actually changed how I played this deck. I primarily would go into multiple drag drivers. I only went into drag strider if I knew I could get the kill on the opponent, which is I feel like how you should play the deck. I don't feel like you should prioritize drag strider, even though he is very fun. Drag driver is just a very excellent G unit. He has a very simple skill, allowing you to CB1 flip a G unit in order to call a ritual unit from the deck, which you'll never run out of because you can, off Luard's skill, put ritual units back into your deck. So you can constantly call your big attackers, you can call stuff like Morfessa, which can call more attackers, or you can call stuff like Preservation Angel, which is actually a 10k shield. But we'll talk about that later. I went into Drag Strider a few times in the game. One of my rounds, I actually went into Drag Strider and messed up. I didn't have 5 ritual units because you need 5 or more ritual units on board to activate his skill. I had 4, so 1 was himself and 3 others, but I had 1 attacker that was not a ritual unit, and I had the option to call one, but I just forgot, and then I still survived the next turn, and I just used another Drag Strider and I killed him because I didn't mess up that time. But yeah, he's a great finisher. You know, he swings for massive numbers, extra crit, extra drive, with guard restrict for grade 1 or graders. So your opponent has to like hard guard this, and a lot of times when my opponents did, they would use like 3 to 4 triggers and it would still be like a 2 to pass, and off 4 drives you're probably going to see some triggers. So Drag Strider was definitely a hype card. Moving on to the main deck, I play 1 extra copy of Dragheart just for Drag Strider's discard skill, and also for thinning a card out of deck with Abyssal Owl. But you don't need to play any more of this. I used to play 2, but I always found myself just bricking by having so many of these in hand. Even 1 extra can lower your consistency for other grade 1s or ritual units. Then I play 2 copies of Solemn Cloud Dragon for my other grade 3. He's our discard target because when he's discarded for paying the cost for stride, you can draw 1. And then he has a really good second effect, even though it's very simple. On Ritual 3 GB2, he picks up 10k. So that's really good when calling him off of your drag driver, because you'll flip a G unit off drag driver, making him a 28k attacker and 38, 48, and just the more the game goes, the more powerful this card's going to get. He was great. Next up, we played 4 copies of our Morfessa. This card right here, this girl, she was one of the best cards in the deck. She gets her in drop, she gets grade -1, which did matter sometimes, but most of the time it didn't, since I wanted to keep her in hand. She is really good for the early game. She picks up 5k power on Ritual 3, which that's not locked to GB. The only thing that's locked technically to GB is the second part of her skill, to which you can counterblast 1 if you have 2 or more G units faced up in your G zone, so only on second stride, to call a ritual unit with a different name from her from the deck. Which sometimes I didn't even use that skill, even later in the game, because this deck can be really CB heavy, especially if you build it around drag driver. So I didn't really use that skill that much. I mostly used her for the early game against Astronomy, since one of your other best grade 1s gets 2k power on ritual, so having her and that rearguard makes a 25k column. And if you stay on grade 2 and just keep hitting your opponent for 25, your opponent has to drop 2 cards from their hand each turn in order to guard it. And if you see a trigger, they basically unguardable. So she's one of the best cards in the entire deck. Then I played this package. It's kind of a whim. It was a last minute decision, but I think that's literally the reason why I went almost undefeated in both rounds. And that is the Teofalt Wisdom package. This is going to be a package that like every Keter deck's going to use, especially once Cellgown comes out. But this is a great package because I used to only play actually the order just for the early game, being able to call my copies of Morfessa and Semius, which we'll talk about in a second. But then I got 4 copies of this, so I figured I might as well just play it because of Shiranui. Shiranui is the worst matchup, it's the scariest matchup, it's the matchup that you'll probably lose to the most, because if you let them stride, they just snowball into so much advantage, and you just minus so much, and you can't keep up with them. So you can almost never let them get to their stride turn. So when I just had Morfessa, it wasn't enough. Like, they could just attack my rear guards, and I was done. I didn't have any good attackers. But if I have 2 good grade 2s to play in the early game, it makes it a lot better. Plus, if you actually open with Wisdom and Teofalt, man, you just snowball into so much good advantage. You get Soul Blast 1, you can look at top 5 and call 1, which is most of the time going to be a grade 1 or grade 2, since this deck is primarily grade 1s and grade 2s, on top of just drawing cards off Wisdom. Plus, she is amazing later in the game. Just having a unit that gets a free 10k power on a drag driver turn is really good, especially on your first drag driver turn. Because usually on your first drag driver turn, your rear guards aren't that strong. Your strongest attack without triggers is usually 28, which some decks can guard pretty easily. So having this card also on board to pick up 5k off the crest and 10k off of its skill, on top of having a booster, usually makes her 33 to 35, which is a very powerful number, and she only gets bigger the longer the game goes on. So Teofalt and the order are definitely, in my opinion, the correct way to play Luard, and I'll probably bump up the order 1 more, and of course when Angelic Brace Ladder comes out, I'm playing that as well. So I'd highly recommend this package if you can afford it. Then 1 Maple to round up the grade 2s. Maple is just a really nice card. Some lists play 2. I think 2 is a little greedy. You don't need 2 because like usually I don't really want to call the other Maple. I usually have like a pretty set board where I just want to call 2 grade 1s and that's it. I don't really want to have just a random Maple lying around. So I only used her for the early game. I can call her down and then intercept with her. And then when I stride, I can call her and then pop her with Dragheart. That's the only reason she exists. Just to die. Then 4 copies of Semius. This is the card I was referring to earlier with Morfessa. He, she, I don't know what they are.
The artist actually was asked that and confirmed that it is a guy.
I knew it. I knew it was a guy. Sorry, random tangent. But I told my brother, I think this is a dude. Okay. So, because I kept calling him a he during the entire event. So on Ritual 3, he gets 2k power. That's it. You just need to have a crest. You don't need to be on Luard or GB, which usually is just inconsequential, but it's actually so good for this deck's early game because you can drop it just behind grade 2, make it 20, or if it's Morfessa, make it 25. Or you can, if they start popping your grade 2s, you can also just move him up and be a 10k attacker if they're grade 2 gaming you. On top of that, his second effect is also really strong. When he's placed other than during the battle phase on GB1, you can look at top 2, call 1, up to 1, actually you don't have to call 1, and put the others on the bottom of the deck. Sometimes later in the game, I'll just call 2 of these if I'm missing a board, and bam, almost instant board. I think Lupe saw this. There was a time where I was missing 5 ritual units off Dragstrider, and I didn't have any ritual units in hand. So I needed to get 5 ritual units in order to kill them with Dragstrider. So what I did is I called 2 Semiuses from the deck. And Semius actually first Semius found a Semius, so I called that Semius. Second Semius found a Morfessa, which I called the Morfessa. The last Semius found nothing, but it didn't matter. I had my 5 ritual units with Dragstrider, so I can just kill them on the next turn, which came in massive clutch.
Yeah, that was a very hype turn, and I did witness that play.
So Semius is definitely one of the best cards in the deck. I've seen List play only 2 of it. I think that's criminal. I think for the grade 2 game, if we're going to stay in this Stride format for a little bit longer, you have to play 4 copies of this card. Then we play 4 copies of Abyssal Owl. This is, so you're probably thinking, why am I playing 4 of this? Because some lists who only play 1 Luard actually play like 2 Abyssal Owl, and the only reason is because of countercharge. You need the countercharge in this deck, especially if you're building a deck around Drag Driver. You want the countercharge. Since you burn through at least 2 CB every turn, sometimes I didn't have enough CB to use Dragheart, but it didn't matter. I wanted Drag Driver so that I can still thin a card out of deck, 1 card, and I can still get the power to the front row off the crest. On top of that, you can also just discard them to add Luards. And sometimes if I didn't have a good ritual unit to call, or call target off Semius, I would just call this, because Semius retires whatever he calls at the end of turn. So then you can have 1 in drop and then bind them in order to countercharge. So I think Abyssal Owl is just a really nice choice. I could just discard him early to build my ritual count, or even call him, and if my opponent attacked him, like for grade 2 gaming or something, I don't care. I'll want him in drop. So, really nice card. I'm actually going to talk about these 2 cards in tandem. They might not seem related, but I ended up calling these 2 cards together a lot of the time. And that's Painkiller Angel and Luminosity Wizard. So, Painkiller, obviously a lot of people know what this card does. She's going to get replaced with Cellgown when Cellgown comes out. But as for right now, she's a great card. She actually helped a ton with building my ritual. A lot of time I would discard a grade 1 from my hand, and then or discard Abyssal Owl to search Luard. And then on turn 2, I would actually call Painkiller with a couple other Morfessas and Semiuses, but I wouldn't have their rituals yet. But then I boost my Vanguard with Painkiller, use Painkiller to Soul Blast the knees out of my soul, and then all of a sudden, bam, instant Ritual 3, while also drawing a card. But the only problem with this play is with her and Teofault, you actually lose quite a lot of soul. Same with Leofault, like you Soul Blast 1. You Soul Blast a lot in this deck along with Countercharge. So Luminosity helps out with that. If I still had her in deck along with the Painkiller and I was behind on advantage, I would just call Luminosity Wizard and Painkiller, or call Painkiller somewhere else and call Luminosity. I would swing with Luminosity because she picks up 10k on Ritual 3 GB1 when she's placed that turn. I would use Drag Driver to call over her. And the reason why that's important is because of her second skill. When she's retired during your turn, and this includes when she's called over, you give your Vanguard 5k and you can perform an optional soul charge, which usually I would always take the soul charge. Just because if I called her and Painkiller, I could still use Painkiller while also getting triple drive. So these 2 were usually the ones I'd call together. Also later in the game, I would just shuffle her back into the deck, basically acting as a third copy of Salt and Cloud, because they basically become almost the same number later in the game. So she's great. I love her. I love Painkiller too. Also, one more tangent. You can actually use her on a Drag Strider turn as well, because Drag Strider retires 2 rear guards for cost. So if you retire her, you can power up your Drag Strider even more to an even more unguardable number. Then for other just one attacks, we play one Preservation Angel. I already referred to her in the video earlier on. And then Yellow Jewel Beast Topaz. Topaz is great because the X is 20k shield, which sometimes did matter, especially against one of my Prism games. I think it mattered a lot. And then for Preservation, she's really good if I'm like really down on an early game. Like if I did not get an early game, I'm getting sacked early on, and I go to my first stride. Usually I don't have like, I have a lot of soul actually. So usually what I did off Drag Driver, off Dragheart, is I called 2 painkillers if I had 2 extra soul. I soul blasted to drop 2 cards, and off Drag Driver I called Preservation because she gets 5k shield and ritual on GB1, or no, not even GB1, sorry, ritual 3. So she's a 10k shield, 10k interceptor, which is very nice. Topaz also helped me build a board if I needed it. I can call it off Luard and then call Morfessas, call Sullen Clouds, so just call attackers, pretty much. Moving on, we have our PGs, which these are just standard PGs. Ezras doesn't matter in this deck unless you're playing Diorung, which is a grade 2. I didn't play Diorung. I didn't feel like I needed him. I don't like the discard just for getting a card back that already discards a card. So it feels like you're getting an extra minus. And then 1 Elementaria. Usually this did not matter. It didn't matter that I had Elementaria unless I was playing against like another Luard. I did face a few Luards, so I could just like Elementaria their Vanguard and then just kill them on the clapback. Then for triggers, we play 8 crit. It doesn't matter what crits they are. I literally never used the crit that gives soul. It could literally have been anything, because even though you do soul blast a lot in this deck, there are ways to get soul that don't involve you calling a critical trigger, which I would never do in this format. You usually use these for your early game. And then 1. All right, 3 draw triggers. I used to play fronts. I've seen people in the tournament I played against Luards, and they played fronts. And Lupe knows this. I don't agree with that at all. I used to play fronts. And the reason why was because I was like, oh, bigger shield, you know, guarding against Shiranui. But I never won a stride against Shiranui. I want to have the grade 2 game against Shiranui. So having 10k shields in the later game is fine, but especially having those early draws, hitting draws defensively, it's so important. And draw triggers were the reason I was able to survive some games.
Yeah, we actually had talked about it, I think, a week before going into the event. And we both decided that in grade 2 gaming, draws are a lot better.
Oh, they're so much more important, because usually they try to retire your grade 2 attackers or just your attackers in general. So sometimes you literally just have to swing the van because you don't want to ride up. So hitting a draw trigger then and drawing into an attacker is so much more valuable than hitting a front with like a 15k shield, which doesn't matter. Then I played 2 vanilla heals and then 2 of the restander heal. Literally these heals, I know this just comes down to matchups, and there's a lot of restanding decks in standard, but I'm thinking about all of my rounds. I literally never got to stride turns with Shiranui because I killed them before that. And I didn't face a single restander deck, so these literally did not matter besides just being 10k shields. I could have played 4 vanillas and nothing of value wouldn't have been lost. But it doesn't mean I would say take these out. If you have these, I recommend playing them at 2 or even 1. Just, if you don't have them, don't fret about it. 15k shields work just fine in this deck. And then finally, 1 Ito's Faro. You don't play the Keter OT. This deck already kind of goes to deck out enough. You don't need to play the Keter one. The blue OT works great, but if you only have access to the Keter one, then that's just how it is. But the blue OT literally did win me 1 or 2 games because of the extra credit. And that's pretty much it for the deck profile. I will go over some of my notable rounds, but keep in mind, I'm going to skip. For anyone who's watching this who played against me, I'm sorry. There's so much to go into. This is already going to be like a 20-25 minute video. And keep in mind, because I played this deck in both days, I have 16 games. Since we played 8 games, we only got the top 8 in both days. So I'll actually go over some of my more notable rounds. Most of my really notable ones came from day 2. So one of my rounds, I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields. I played 2 Sentinels and Triggers. They were 10k shields was against, I'll go over my Shiranui since they're the most important. I played one Shiranui each day, which is kind of funny. I dodged a lot of them, but the games I did play against Shiranui proved that this deck could work against it. Since I never lost, I still had a consistent grade 2 game against each. I never felt like I was down on my luck against them. I felt like I was consistently pressuring them. I had enough early guard, not just to guard my Vanguard, but to guard my grade 2 attackers, which is super important. So I never got to the stride turns. I never wanted to get to the stride turns. I just wanted to consistently call my rear guards and just keep attacking their Vanguard, keep pressuring them to the point where they rode up. They never did ride up, so we ended up winning while they were on grade 2, which is great. Then I actually played against one of my more notable rounds that had Lupe and JC kind of sweating, was the one I referred to with the double drag strider where I misplayed. I was playing against Prisms. He actually made me go first against Prisms because he knew I was playing a stride deck set. He didn't know which one though, which was bad for me. Like, I don't want to ride up against Prisms because if I ride up to grade 3 against Prisms, I don't do anything. And they not only get their grade 3 turn, but they also get the 5k power to the front row and the extra crit on Van with Labrador. He also early crit me in the game, which did not help. So I was already at 2, but I was so scared of what Prisms can do because I know they hit for massive numbers that I was so afraid. My first stride turn, I healed down because I was at 3, I healed down to 2, and I was just like, I had 6 cards in my hand, and I was like, this might be the end. Like, I might just lose here because he was going on to his Persona Ride turn. He was hitting big numbers. I managed to guard all of it, and then, or guard 2 of the attacks. Then I actually hit OT on one of the rear guard swings, which massively helped my tempo. I still wanted to drop a PG on the Vanguard swing because I was not risking getting crit OT dealt 4 damage. I could not risk that. And after that, they kept me at 2 face down damage. I didn't have any counter chargers. So I decided to say, screw it. I went into Drag Strider because I had an Abyssal Owl in hand. I discarded it, added the Luard. And this is the moment where I forgot to have 5 virtual units. So I thought, that's it. Like, this is game. I lost. Like, I misplayed. Thankfully, I had some defensive cards in hand. I had 1 PG in my hand off my drive checks. But he also didn't see Persona Ride. And he also had all face down damage. So my man legit could not do anything. He could just swing with 1 rear guard, swing with Van, pass. And I literally kept myself at 2. I guarded the attacks because I was like, screw it. If this drag driver doesn't kill him, the next one will, because I knew he had Elementaria. So I just went into Drag Strider again, and I swung, and he Elementaria'd it, but then I draw checked 2 crits and put them both on my rear guard, and swung for 3 crit while he was at 5, or he was at 4, which that just killed him. Again, I'm not going to go over every single one of my rounds. Just know that in my rounds, I lost the first 2 rounds. I lost against the Luard, and I lost against some other deck. I don't remember that deck, honestly, which deck I faced round 2. But I remember my opponent being super nice, so I'm sorry that I can't remember the round. I just remember that I lost that round. I was feeling pretty down, but then I decided to just lock in. I won the following 6 games. I won the last 5 rounds of Swiss, and then I won my game in top 8. But unfortunately, Lupe and Tony lost their round, so we couldn't advance. And then day 2, I won, like JC, I was winning every single game. I won 6 rounds in a row, and then I lost to Youthberg on round 7, which was the last round of Swiss, because he hit crit turn 2, crit on his first Youthberg swing, and then hit OT off Tempest. So I was like, I mean, if that's the only round that I lose, then that's fine. And then final round, which was the first round of top 8, I won that one against Charmot because I hit 2 crit. So I guess my bad luck carried over and turned into good karma. And unfortunately, Lupe lost his round against Hamske, and JC lost his round against the mirror match. So it was unfortunate, but it was a very good run. I had a great time in this event, played against a lot of really cool opponents. I want to thank y'all so much for watching. Let me know what you think of my Luard list. Let me know if you thought my decisions made sense. Let me know if you think the order build is bad. Let me know if you think that if there's anything else I could do to change my list, improve my play, because I'm really enjoying Luard. But with that being said, we'll see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.